requires an enormous amount of self-care and maintenance in order for us to remain authentic, but most importantly, to remain vigilant of what we do so that we can be effective workers. If you look at these agreements, don't consider them from the point of view of the person that we're helping. Consider them for your own point of view, from where you're at. I'm excited by the fact that some of you have said, I've been at it for 5 years, I've been at it for a year, this is my third role here. But I would really want you all to consider that you are the leadership of this issue moving forward. Should you choose to remain in this work, you will be the voice of reason that will possibly see the end of this. And that as you get to that point, you will have practiced these community agreements responsibly and at a consistent rate so that you can remain very present in the work that we do. Jake, you're sitting to my right. When I say first and foremost, be human, be yourself, people know whether you are being authentic or genuine. What's the first thing that pops in your mind when you hear me say that?
I think that means just showing up with, like, knowing that it's, like, you come as you first. You're not, like, coming as, like, professor, educator, I'm telling you what's going on, I know best. It's, like, you're showing up and you're, like, see the other person as a human and you're, like, open to, you know, connecting with that person on a human level.
Very well said. Very well said. You're an advocate. You're an advocate, and you're going into an environment where they are the expert. And hear what I say. They are the expert. They are the ones that sleep outside at night. They are the ones who know when police come tap them on the shoulders. They are the ones who know when there's danger and they need to get out. And as experts, you are entering a domain where you're giving your power to them to let them tell you, this is what I see. This is what's going on. This is what's happening. When I think of be human, be yourself, I think about the challenges we all have coming here. Where did you come from this morning, Fred?
Inglewood.
How was traffic?
It was okay. So that I was like, so it's funny because like when I looked on GPS, it literally said 28 minutes, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. I got time. I left the house at 8:10, and then the traffic changed so quick. Like it switched on me so quick. It said 38 minutes. I was like, what the like?
So let me add to Fred's dilemma. I'm gonna make up a scenario. So Fred parked across the street in the 1 hour parking, right? Stick with me, right? Let's just say that in the 5 minutes it took Fred to get his stuff and get to the door, Fred would have got a parking ticket. Right?
They're mad as hell.
Let me go a step further. He didn't get a parking ticket. In the 5 minutes that he came out and came in, he left his jacket in the back seat and someone busted the window because they wanted to grab the jacket.
I'd have been even more mad.
Right? In that condition, with your head somewhere else because your car just got broken into and you just got a parking ticket, how am I going to expect you to go up to someone in a tent and go, hi, my name is Fred. I'm with the Department of Health Services. How are you today? You wouldn't feel like doing that, would you?
No, I wouldn't. I'd probably call off.
I think what we have to understand about this work is that it's not just human from how it changes and the elements that we encounter in the field. It's human from where we are. It's human from the space where we are never going to do this work alone. And I'm going to chase for a minute because maybe you haven't seen that happen. So I'll keep going. I keep thinking of you because you're sort of like my reset button on these things, right? But we are never going to do this work alone. And if I go out with Jordan to talk to a group of people, and I've had the morning that I just described Fred had with the broken window and the ticket, I'm going to be very tempted to say, hey, Jordan, I'm having a hard time this morning. I'm not leaving. I'm going to be here. I'm going to carry the water. I'm going to carry the bag. And I'll carry all the materials you need. But could you mind being the lead engagement for a while until I can find my bearings and figure out whether or not I can do it? And you will.
Does everyone know their spots and all that already?
We're going to get into that.
Okay.
Because that's key.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
that's very true, yeah. So I want to be clear on that. The authenticity of this is just being yourself. That if you're not there, please know that this problem isn't going to go away. That encampment will be there tomorrow, and the day after that, and the week after that, and the month after that. You, however, we need you all the time. And to do that, do not be fake, do not be phony, be honest to yourself. The worst thing you can do is go out there with that fake smile and say, hi, I'm Fred, how are you? And then suddenly find yourself angry at people who didn't do anything to you because you're having a particularly shitty day, right? Sorry, picking on you.
No, you good.
personify humility. I'm going to pick that one myself. Is that part of it is that you want to be humble. Remember, I told you, we are not the experts. They are. Give power to the person to speak. Remember that the life of a person on the streets of Los Angeles is a life in isolation. If you're not aware of this, if you have slept on the streets of Los Angeles for at least 12 months, you are 400% more likely to be assaulted or robbed or attacked than the Angelino who's housed. So consider that for a minute. You don't go in as the expert. You don't go in as the leader. You try to just be humble and listen. And you try to use things like, I can't imagine like that, how I would feel. Like, you are really resilient. You use positive approaches through humility that you are trying to show. You, my friend, said something really odd at the beginning of this, Jordan. You said Skid Row is your comfort zone. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Be comfortable outside of your comfort zone. What do you think of when you hear me say that?
This wasn't my comfort zone before at all. I mean, I grew up in LA enough to know that this shouldn't be. But I think it's knowing that I can go anywhere and that my role is the same.
Yeah.
And that's been since I went to cadets, since I went all over the county, regardless. There's that fear that comes with it, but I think first and foremost, again, my job is to serve whoever, if it's my clients or any number of people around me. So I think if I go in there knowing what my role is, then I can go anywhere and do it. I've learned how lucky you are to wear a badge sometimes is a good safety net too. Things like that you find out over time. But I think once I know what I'm doing, I can go anywhere and do it. And I think if I carry that kind of that energy with me, then people around me will feel it too. And that could be the people that I'm going out to outreach or the people that I work with too. And I really like what you said about telling people how you're feeling that day, because that's just how a team works. There's no point in not saying it. But yeah, I think if you come in there knowing what you have to do and knowing what you can do, then you can hopefully do anything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well said. Don't tell people I know what you're going through. I understand, or I've been there. What do you think of when you hear that?
This one guy with pretty good hair said the job is 75% listening, 25% talking.
Thank you. This job is 75% listening, 25% talking.
Who's the guy with the good hair? Just kidding.
But let me just tell you all though, that is very true because, maybe you don't understand. I've told you, I know I've said this before, there have never been 2 days exactly the same in my 22 years. And you will never see the same day. You'll see circumstances that are similar. You'll see people who are using crystal meth. You'll see kids who are, spit out of foster care. But each one of them is incredibly unique. When you say things like, I know what you're going through, you may mean it well. You may mean it out of good heart because you're trying to show a level of empathy. But we don't know. We really don't know. And we assume right away that in a really short window of 5-10 minutes that we started to build eye contact and trust with someone, that we have the confidence to say that. I would argue I have known people on the streets for 8 years before they made eye contact with me. And that the day that they made eye contact with me, I celebrated because it was a breakthrough. And just think about what I'm telling you. Again, please consider that one because it's very important. Even if you have been homeless yourself, everyone's story is different, and that's important in this. Because again, I'm not going to ask the group here, but I am going to tell you all that in your teams, you are going to have colleagues who have been homeless, and who have been homeless for a very long time. In your team, you're going to have colleagues that have spent half of their adult life incarcerated. But in your team, those people who have been incarcerated for half of their adult life, in your team, those people who have been homeless for a long time are peer level people who have the authenticity that feels like trust. If I'm a veteran and I'm homeless, I want to talk to someone who has been a veteran. If I've seen combat and I've seen things shot at me, I might listen to the person who's also seen the same things I've seen. I'm going to be clear too, because sometimes it's not talked about. I feel safe when I see someone that speaks the same language I speak. I feel safe when someone has the color of the skin that I have. I feel safe sometimes when I see the person who grew up in the same neighborhood that I grew up in. Because I can say maybe this person gets what I'm saying. So always consider that everyone's story is different, and even if you have been there, have the presence of mind to let folks speak before you try to use empathy. Be responsive, not reactive. Don't get defensive. Often negative situations have nothing to do with you. What do you think of Fred when you hear that one?
Just be mindful of people's, just be mindful of that people have, like PH has been going through something.
Right?
Like that day could have like had a shitty day like me or worse. So don't be offended. Don't take offense to what they say.
Fred, can I ask you a question?
Go for it.
You've been in Venice.
Yes.
Have you ever been cussed at?
Of course, all the time. I got cussed at before I even left my job by my own client that I've been helping for like 2 months.
How did it feel?
It didn't feel good, but at the same time, I understood why. I totally know they're frustrated because they've been like in that shelter for like a year. They haven't been getting any support, or they felt they haven't been getting any support. So they like, why am I still here? I'm only supposed to be here for 6 months, and it still haven't happened. But I'm like, well, COVID happened. That's what happened. And housing shut down when COVID happened. Like, I can't force the apartment to be open for you at this moment. You know, like. So we had the conversation, but yeah, I got cussed out. I mean, that's every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Who would accept that job? Imagine, hey, by the way, you're gonna get cussed at every day.
Yeah, that's part of the job.
That's part of the job.
Yeah. It's
gonna
sad
show-
that it feels like that, but it's just
I'm gonna show you
facts.
a 2-minute video. I hope the volume works.
Yeah, Venice Beach.
Oh, man, I gotta put the closed caption.
You're gonna be in this, huh, Fred?
Huh?
You're gonna be in this video.
Yep, I'm gonna be right in the background. Like, spotlight. No, I'm
Getting
just
cussed-
kidding.
getting cussed at on
Yeah. And not taking offense to it.
video. Yeah.
Does the video itself?
Have a
volume up?
button.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's cool.
What's that?
He asked about the video that have volume, but it's
Like,
on.
I thought, you know what, let me check the images to see what Well, just watch the images because they're gonna show you something I want y'all to look
Oh,
on.
there you go.
Beach. Up until April of this year, every one of these was full to capacity with homeless encampments. And we're talking large, expansive encampments.
You know, the
By
site-
late April, those were cleared
Yeah.
out. People living here have been offered
Okay,
housing. The
okay.
city enforced city code to keep it clear. And this is the example LA Councilman Mike Bonin says proves that this
Yeah, by
plan
the
he has
basketball
now
court.
will work for the rest of the boardwalk. A vote last week in council to approve $5 million for the effort stalled, though. That's been pushed to later this week. But Councilman Mike Bonin says the local nonprofit St. Joseph Center already has
Yep,
the space
I
to
work
start
with them.
housing people. So they went forward with the plans today, separating the boardwalk into 5 zones they hope to clear within 6 weeks. But no one says this is going to be easy. And some of the people experiencing homelessness here tell us the same, hoping for some other solution for those unwilling or unable to move inside.
Like make an encampment, you know, just for the homeless, and where people can go and post up their tents, have security there, you know, electricity, have wash, you know, you wash your stuff. And a lot of them need mental health. A lot need mental health services. A majority of them is actually stuck out there, and it's not. They're not doing it on purpose, not because they want to be. It's just that their mind is mentally set that this is the only place that they got to go.
Now, under the councilman's plan, Zone 1, which is just north of the handball courts, that's supposed to be cleared out by Friday. By the end of the week, everybody offered housing, interim at least, and then they're supposed to be getting a voucher for permanent housing after that. We're going to get into all the details about that coming up on the NBC4 News at 6. For now, reporting from Venice, I'm John Kennedy.
So why do I show you this? Let me explain something very quickly in my logic behind this video. The point was, be responsive, not reactive, don't get defensive. Often negative situations have nothing to do with you. Those courts, those handball courts that you saw right there were empty. Were absolutely empty. But if I'm correct, and I know you'll know this better than I do, they were full.
Mad full, like compacted.
They were basically
All
filled
four.
with
Yeah.
belongings, tents that tarp over the
Cardboard,
front.
tarp.
And not just that, but piles of bicycles,
Yeah.
piles of just everything that belonged to people, right?
Yep.
Those things didn't magically disappear. Two things happened. Sanitation showed up, but sanitation warned people 48 hours before, 72 hours before, and then suddenly people had to take their entire life that they had there and move it to another spot. And you don't take a room this size, because this is how big those courts are, and just move it in one shot. It takes days to move it, because you're basically taking everything out. And in doing so, you're putting it in another spot in town where you have no idea if between trips someone's gonna start taking your stuff, right? So imagine you approaching that individual in the hours right after they had to move their entire life to another spot. The person's not gonna be in a good mood. That person's gonna be very, very upset, and right away, because we wear these things, who's to say, are you a cop? Are you following me? What, I'm not supposed to be here? So all those things have nothing to do with us. They have nothing to do with us, because we are the forward-facing, positive, health-centered people who are trying to help. But it's hard for a person who's just had their life moved to distinguish that from the sanitation team, the police that came and threatened me with tickets, the folks who are basically pushing me out. So I say this to you because I think one thing to understand is that the changing nature of homelessness in LA, with what I hate to say, and I'm gonna take my badge off because I don't wanna get fired, the criminalization of homelessness in the city of Los Angeles creates an environment where this point is gonna be more and more important. We must know that if a person tells us no, it's no. If I walk up to the individual, I don't need to convince them to have a conversation with me. If they give me a signal and say whatever it is, they may just do it politely and say no thank you. They may tell you, as they often told Fred, fuck off, leave, walk away. You don't need to engage. You don't need to go, oh yeah, well, fuck you. No, no.
Oh, yeah, nah.
Disengage. And you know what? Come back another day. And just remember that anything you say may feel instigating. Oh yeah? I'll be back tomorrow. No, we don't need to say that. I know it sounds incredibly simplistic, but I think it's important to understand that we're human. That if you have a wound and I start touching it and I start making you bleed again, you're gonna feel pain. And that it may be an extreme example of what I'm describing, but that is what happens from a simple gesture, a look, a statement. So please, please know that, again, the responsive, not reactive, is incredibly important, especially in light of what's happening in the city right now. I'll go through these myself. Take a few seconds to think before you speak. Reactive is about you. Responsive is about the other person. And I think that's key. In the conversations where you all heard me say 75% listening, 25% talking, I would argue that the 25% talking, I might want to say it to myself in my head before I say it out loud to see or try to consider how a person might interpret what I'm saying. I would also say that it's easy to do something where you want to share with another person something you've seen so that you might create a bond with the individual. So let me use a really plain example. Y'all on Instagram, right? Y'all have a friend on Instagram that likes to show off what they eat or how fancy their car is or how often they travel. That's a human thing. We want to show to our friends that we're healthy, that we're good, right? But sometimes it's imposing and it feels tiresome. And you might want to draw a connection with someone where you'll say, hey, I've been to Detroit. I actually went there in the 90s. I've been to Joe Louis Arena. I know what it's like. You know what? That's not relevant to this conversation right now. You're trying to find a bond with individuals, but you're not trying to top them. You're not trying to do that thing where you're saying, oh, well, I have a bigger one, or I've seen a better one, or mine is blue. Again, I'm not saying that it sounds simplistic, but part of it is we're human. You may not think about it, but it may come out naturally, and you want to just judge that when you measure your thoughts before they are formed into words. If you find yourself going into an emotional or physical place that might trigger you, don't go there. Let me be frank. Has anyone here in the work that they've done encountered a person that just makes them sick, that makes them feel like, fuck, this person's a pain in the ass?
Yeah.
This person reminds me of that prick that I used to go to school with. Or this person reminds me of that dude who I got in a fight with. That's not abnormal. That's normal. I'm gonna go the opposite direction. Has anyone seen someone here that looks like a family member? Has anyone encountered someone who's homeless that reminds them of an uncle, an aunt, a cousin, a nephew? Both those responses have directions that are really weird. One is to start alienating the person and walking away from them because they didn't say anything bad to you, but their resemblance or their pattern of speech reminds you of something that makes you feel gross, that doesn't make you feel good. Or the opposite. I want to overhelp this lady because she reminds me of my grandma. I know that my shift ended at 4. I'm now going to rent a U-Haul with Savannah, and we're going to start moving stuff into a warehouse in Norwalk for the next 4 hours. That's very personal, by the way. Just because the lady reminded me of grandma. Both are bad. Both are bad. And I know that the term is transference and countertransference, but I want to just put it out really plainly. You will know. You will know when you find yourself in that weird feeling where something feels off. The piece about safe, physical place that might trigger you is important in that if something doesn't feel right when you're going into a space, you never go into the space alone. You tell a colleague in a way that makes sense to tell the colleague something's off, we need to back up. Or like our teammates have discovered, we have a teammate who's coded message with his colleague where they say, hey, I left the sandwiches in the car. Let's go get them. And there are no sandwiches in the car, but you know what sandwiches in the car is? We need to get out of here. There's someone with a knife right here. And yeah, they're not pointing a knife at me, but I've seen it. And I don't feel safe here because there's just 2 of us and there's 8 of them. Let's go get the sandwiches in the car. And that's the message, right? Dude, I gotta share a really fast one with you guys. Can I share a story real fast? Right? So, I was working for people assisting the homeless, and for many years I worked in Inglewood. And I was at a Motel 6, or this big motel that was right off of the 405 freeway. I forget the name of the motel, but it's a big one. And the reason I was there was because a lot of the families in Inglewood that I was interviewing had agreed to let me interview them in the parking lot with my colleagues. And we were doing really good work that morning, and families that we had engaged all week were coming to meet us there so that we could do a lot of paperwork with them. And at some point, 2 officers from Inglewood PD waved at me from across the street. And I thought, what do they want? What's going on? Why are they waving at me? So I told my colleagues, hey, you guys keep going, I'm gonna go over there. I said, hi, I'm Rudy from PATH, can I help you? He goes, yeah. He goes, what are you guys doing? I'm like, well, we set up interviews here with families, and the families are pulling up in their cars. We're taking all the kids' information, we're doing it. He goes, but why there in that parking lot? He goes, well, the families thought it was convenient because it's closed, there's not a lot of cars here, it's easy. He goes, you guys need to get out. And I'm like, why? He goes, do you look up in the 6th window? Don't look now. But do you see the guys looking at you from the 6th window? The 6th floor window? And I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that. He goes, that's where they deal. You're basically in their spot. They're distributing the stuff from there. And you're basically ruining their business right now because you're doing all this work with families, and now the people who come in to buy from them can't buy from them. And I never realized that. I didn't know that. I had no idea that was going on. I don't know whether it was true or false. One cop was basically saying that they had a narcotics thing that was following it and that we were getting in their way and we needed to get out. But I never felt unsafe there until the cop told me that there was a reason I needed to get out. And when I stopped to think about it, I asked my colleagues, I go, do you guys pick up on this? And they're like, not really, but we noticed something weird. And well, what's that? All the families were like, hey, let's get out of here quick. Let's do it fast, fast, fast. So even the families that were coming in were like, hey, what do you got? Let's go. Hey, could you meet me over here? One family wanted us to follow them to a 7-Eleven. So I think I use this example because maybe you didn't see it. I didn't feel it, but it was there. And when I realized that not the cop was telling me to get out, but that the families were saying, hey, let's do this fast, I started to pick up, we need to move out. We need to get out. Now, let me be very clear. The example is an extreme one. But the reason I share this with you is because some things will be very visible to you. Some things will happen right in front of you. some things will be so nuanced and so completely off that you won't recognize them right away. So I want to just urge you to just use your gift of insight, of looking around, and of being able to detect things. Remember, if your colleague is the one engaged in the conversation, you are the eyes for that person. Fred and I don't need to talk to the same person. Fred can talk to the person. I'm going to stand behind so that if anyone tries to interrupt Fred, I'll catch them so Fred can keep talking. So I want to just get into that, and I'll get into it a little bit later. Know the limits of your skills. Do not promise or overcommit things you don't have. Never, ever, ever give the person the sense that you are going to provide something for them that you do not have access to. You might have a colleague who knows how to go to DPSS. You may have a colleague who knows how to get people's Social Security benefits turned on, but you don't. The best thing you can say is, you know what? Do I have your permission to check in with my colleague? Because he might have access to something that could help us. That's the best thing to do. And again, it sounds simplistic. It's really easy to want to overcommit to things in an effort to want to please people. People often jump to conclusions and diagnoses too quickly. Don't assume that just because someone is experiencing homelessness that you know what's going on with them. Again, it's easy to say. We're going to talk about the fact that in places where you see high levels of crystal meth use, especially around young people, I would predict with my hand over my heart that those kids have been in foster care. I'm going to predict quite safely that those kids have seen trauma in their life. And that I might assume things about violence in their life, but I cannot go there yet until I hear them say it to me. So it's important to understand these things when we move into these environments. Give without expecting anything in return is really, really strong. Because again, I'm going to say it like my first boss told me many years ago. Rudy, you're going to succeed at this job maybe 30% of the time. You're going to fail 70% of the time. And I know it sounds incredibly disheartening, and why would anyone assume a job like this? But that's because this is a human element of engagement over time. Those 30% successes feel incredibly powerful. This is not a high-paying job, but spiritually and in a weird, emotional way, it is incredibly encouraging. I've worked in a machine shop before. I've worked at a library. Has anyone here ever worked in the public sector, whether in a restaurant or in a public having to deal with customers?
I used to wash cars.
No? You used to wash cars?
Yeah, I was a server and a bartender for a long time.
How wonderful is it to work with customers? You never had to, right?
Yeah, I have.
Where?
Restaurants.
Oh, aren't customers nice?
I really like their sauces.
The reason I bring that up is because when you are working in the public facing with, let's say, customers, there's a feeling of dread you have on a Sunday night before Monday comes. There's a feeling when you're driving to this place like it feels like you're driving to your jail or to your torture. This is not that job. I honestly tell you that yes, I've had miserable days, I've seen death, but I've always woken up in the morning with a feeling of excitement that I might see something today that I haven't seen before, and that if I can actively participate in a way that could cause change over time, I'm a little machine in the whole machine of the things that are doing these things. Any questions on these folks? We're getting to the 10:30, so right now I'm going to give you all 7 minutes. We're going to get started at 10:30. Take a break. What I'm going to do right now is, who has, you have an access card, you have an access card, you don't have an access card, you don't have an access card. I'm going to get you guys these pass cards right now.
Okay.
So if y'all bear with me, I'm going to run down. We're going to get rolling again at 10:30.
Were you about to go to the, cause I have to take my phone in. It didn't even send you the text, did it?
I got a text from you.
Did it?
No, I did. You sent it to my personal phone, right?
I sent it to that number.
Give me 1 second. Oh, you're right.
Yeah, I have to go to the equipment.
Yeah, so I think a few of us. So who here has a tablet? You do.
Yeah.
You don't?
I get mine back, it didn't work.
Because it was junk.
Yeah.
And you don't.
I don't, yeah.
So I need to get you all tablets.
Okay.
You have a cell. You have a work cell?
No.
You have a work cell?
I do.
You have a bad work cell.
A bad one.
Yeah, so I'm going to reach out to Louis for tech stuff. So we're going to get to that. But right now, the first thing I want to get you all is these things.
Okay.
So you don't have to wait for me
Do you
to
want me to-
open your door.
Do you want me to email Louis?
Do you mind telling Louis that we have, just say, hey, Rudy's going to reach out because we have some folks that need to switch out or get equipment.
Yeah,
Folks, we'll
wow.
get started again at 10:30. I'll be right back, okay?
Bathrooms right here?
What?
Bathroom?
Yeah, right out to the left.
Okay.
I'm gonna go outside for a walk.
Please. And I'm gonna run down to Paula. I'll be right back.